Jonet Fraser, or Frisell, was a contemporary of Elspeth McEwen, one of the last women to be executed for witchcraft in Scotland. Jonet's story, though, began and ended very differently. To begin with, it was Jonet herself that went to the church authorities with her fears that she might be tainted with witchcraft. Jonet seems to have been a deeply religious girl, spending her free time reading the Bible, and she began to have visions at the age of 12. She later confessed these visions to a local minister, giving us a record of what she saw in them. She reported seeing a black man, often when she was praying, but also a bonny, disembodied hand holding a rod that was budding. The word rod here being an older Scots word for stick. She asked this apparition, "Is that thy hand and rod, O Lord?" She also had a vision while returning home one night after suddenly feeling very drowsy and falling asleep on the road. She said she was awoken by a voice asking her, "Awake, why sleepest thou?" and found herself surrounded by lightning. A dove sitting on a nearby bush accompanied her home afterwards. These visions, particularly that of the black man, disturbed her greatly until she had another vision of the hand holding a rod that was now doubled and spraying and forthcoming. After that, she said she did not see the black man again. I think the inferment here is that this black man is the devil and that she was afraid that he had some kind of claim to her. But it is quite difficult from the little bit of description she gave to find any meaning or reason to these visions. It is maybe a little too easy to see that she had some struggles with her mental health with our modern eyes. But in terms of the backdrop of the time, with the witch panics by now beginning to peter out, but also with the stress and upheaval of the persecution of the Covenanters still very fresh, even for a young woman not quite in her 20s, as Jonet was when she described these things. When she was 14, she had another vision while praying in which 3 figures in white surrounded her and moved clockwise around her while one of them spoke to her in scripture. What's interesting in these earlier accounts of her visions is that they describe her as a holy woman and even ascribe miracles to her. These miracles were really quite odd though. She was with her cousin one day reading their Bibles together on the banks of the Nith, and she got up to have a drink of water and left her book open at the 34th chapter of Isaiah, verses 5 to 11. When she came back, it looked like a great deal of blood had been spilled on the open pages. On closer inspection, she realised it wasn't blood, but just a blood-coloured substance that she could not wipe off the page, making it illegible. The next day, which happened to be a Sunday, she was reading in her father's barn when it happened again, mysteriously covering the writing she was reading at the time. It happened once more the following Sunday while she was reading, the red substance appearing about half an inch or a centimetre above the page before falling and covering the writing while she was watching it happen. The blood and the Bible it was spilled on was witnessed and attested by Henry Maxwell of Dalswinton. He described it as not blood, for it is as tough as glue and will not be scraped off with a knife as blood will. When Jonet was brought before the presbytery later, she claimed then that she had been pretending prophesying and seeing visions, and that she had sinned greatly and in being deluded by Satan. Her book was examined then, and no one could figure out what had happened to it. She was brought back again, and she acknowledged that she was possessed by some sort of evil spirit. Surprisingly, no further record of her exists, so we have to assume that no punishment was meted out to her for her supposed possession, as that would have been recorded. What are we to make of that? Well, perhaps it was due to the fact that Jonet was a young, unmarried woman who first brought herself to the attention of the authorities, not an older woman with local enemies or few friends. Or perhaps it was a sign of the changing of the times, even though poor Elspeth McEwen suffered a much different fate just a few years later.